Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Monday, August 18th, 2025, and today we're talking about poor potato yields and what to do about it, managing a greenhouse when it's endlessly hot outside, and what we're up to for the next month on the farm. So let's do it. All right, happy Monday to you all. I hope everyone had a great first weekend of the Premier League. Well, ours was okay. Over halfway through August, though, which is fun and wild. I did not do anything super interesting this weekend. I mean, obviously watched a little soccer. We did another hike, though. This one was perhaps more of a walk, maybe. There's this place nearby, this sort of free sculpture park that you can go to. It's free, and you can walk around with lots of things that the kids are allowed to interact with, lots of different structures and sculptures that they can climb on and play with. They loved it. And I got to say, between nonprofit parks like this and then our public lands, there are a lot of cool things to do for free with kids all over the place. And it's been fun to get out there and explore a few more of those in our area as kind of a matter of habit or tradition now every weekend. So I'm sure there's space for more nonprofit art parks like this with their ecological restoration projects, which are very cool. Maybe that farmers could collaborate with and create working spaces that citizens could walk around and see art and food and ecology all working together like that. I don't know, or something along those lines. Anyway, shouts to all the freely accessible outdoor spaces we have in this country. Very cool stuff. All right, so today I was thinking we could take some time to talk about what the next month looks like on our farm, as I try to do every month. Here in Kentucky, Zone 6B, just a reminder where I am. I like to do this to give you perspective, not just on what I have going on, but what each part of the season kind of looks like. And I think August/September are a really interesting part of the season because it's when the transition really sets in. Like, for a lot of farmers in my region, this is arguably the busiest time since maybe June or early July, when you're getting potatoes and onions and garlic out while also still planting a lot of stuff and harvesting a lot of stuff and trellising. But the late summer is similarly busy in some ways. I mean, sometimes it's equally busy, but in some different ways. For instance, we're heading into winter squash harvesting season, so curing and storage preparations have to be made for that, which reminds me we would make a good segment on the show soon. So note to self on that. Sweet potatoes will start to come out soon at the end of September for us. We usually try to beat the first frost, which traditionally could be as early as the first week of October, but honestly haven't been that early in quite a while. So we'll say mid to late October. However, with sweet potatoes, we're also not trying to grow rugby balls. We want reasonably sized roots for ourselves and for our customers. Some customers like the big ones, but most of our customers like small roasters. So even in a hot year, we will try to pull the sweet potatoes by mid-October at least. We're also still starting and planting a lot of the regular weekly stuff, such as lettuces, but also some of the fall crops, such as Napa cabbage, kale, beets, spinach, carrots, and so on. There will still be a fair amount of crops directly seeded into the field over the next month also, including spinach, at least once things start to cool down, which I like to plant well into late October as a human forage crop, somewhere between a cover crop and a cash crop, because it will survive much or all of the winter, bearing ice storms like we had last year. And then in the spring, it bounces back in like March, sweeter than ever, and having held the soil together all winter. So we appreciate that. Good on you, spinach. Carrots we will plant in the field as late as August 20th, though short season only at that point. But October 1st in the tunnel is kind of as late as we'll plant them there for January carrots, which sweet as all get out. The challenges will persist, though, as we have entered a very dry and very hot spell here, and September is still very much summer in Kentucky most years, and I imagine that will be the case this September, given the precedent set by every other summer month this year. I can still plant a few summer cover crops over the next month, still having my teff fling, filling that out to see if it might turn into something, bigger, but also, try not to jinx it. More on teff later, though. It's not super excited about this drought we've slipped into. It's kind of browning a little bit, but yes, summer cover crops are still an option, though I'm trying not to overcomplicate anything going into the fall. It's got to be a crop followed by a cover crop. I'm not trying to throw too many cover crops and then cover crops in the mix, but it happens sometimes. Winter cover cropping for its part won't really start until mid-September here, unless it is those like summer cover crops like sorghum, Sudan grass. Those are kind of some that I'm just happy to let get big and tall and then die in a frost or two. Those can still go in now for us, but ditto things like field peas, beans, buckwheat, that sort of stuff that is all fair game to grow, and then it'll just die in those first frosts. Buckwheat will probably flower and even seed before the first frost at this point. You can grow it to a flower and then it'll just die in that cold. The biggest challenge with us this time of year is always just getting colder weather crops into the ground while the world outside is still boiling, not to mention the simple fact that we are all pooped and sunburnt. This is always one of those times of year that I think of the loose similarities between farm life and maybe like the life of a professional athlete, minus of course like the money or fame or personal trainers or all the things. But anyway, the similarities are like where the hardest the season gets is not in the middle, but at the very end when you're beat up, bruised, burnt, or burn out. But that is when you have to also climb the steepest hill, play the hardest games, dig the deepest. Mentally, of course, this is still a no and low till podcast. Anyhow, how does the next month look for you all? Oh, in fact, maybe that seems like a good idea for this week's video prompt. Hopefully, we're still getting some of those fails, but send Farmer Mike at no-tillgrowers.com a 20-second video clip talking about how you are gearing up for the fall. What does it look like? How are the gardens doing? What's the greenhouse look like? All right, I think that's it for this late summer stuff. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, potato yielding, BRB. Today's episode is brought to you by Farmhand. We know it's peak season, you're busy, but the messages you send now are what drive renewals later. That's why Farmhand is offering free, instant access to their farmer-built newsletter builder. No demos, no setup fees, just drop your logo, upload your list, and start sending farm-branded emails that boost sales, engage members, and save you hours each week. Get free access today at farmhand.partners/no-till. That's farmhand.partners/no-till. All right, back to the show. If you, the listener, are enjoying this podcast, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-tillgrowers. I will try to get to questions from everywhere that questions come in, but I will always get to your Patreon questions. Now, today's Patreon question comes to us from Patreon member Stephanie Crocker, who writes, quote, "Question, I have just finished harvesting my potatoes and was noticing a few of the plants had these tiny little potato buds. At the time of harvest, most of the plants had senesced, so my assumption was that the tuber production was at a standstill. This year, I was extra vigilant about hilling them, and we've had heavy rains this season. I set them out in week 14 and harvested week 29. My question is, could I have done more to increase my yield? I planted 15 pounds for a yield of 80 pounds. Thanks," end quote. Okay, so great question here. Now, I will say that a lot of the answer will come down to the potato varieties that you set out and where you are. Some are just naturally lower yielders. Some are slower into production, etc. So I figured, not knowing those things, I will talk about what we know will slow or reduce yields, and maybe you can avoid those things for next year. First, we know that overwatering can reduce yields, which could be the simple answer here to what happened. Maybe just all that rain slowed them down. Depending on the soil type and conditions, especially drainage, excessive moisture can lead the plant to arrest their production because, to put it way too simply, the plants struggle to pull moisture, thus nutrients up through the plant for photosynthesis when the soil is overly saturated. The roots likewise struggle to, quote unquote, breathe, assimilate nitrogen, or basically do anything but hang on for dear life until the excess of moisture subsides. Also, like I mentioned, variety is going to play a big role here. Early varieties tend to yield fewer pounds of potatoes than later varieties, sometimes by close to half. So in other words, a pound of early potatoes, or like a fingerling potatoes for that matter, may yield, say, like 5 pounds of potatoes, but a pound of later season potatoes, the ones that take longer to grow, may yield 10 or more pounds. That is completely arbitrary, but the idea being that the longer the potato typically takes to grow, the heavier the harvest. Hilling, as it sounds like you did, helps with the yield according to the research. Not hilling, especially if you're like not mulching it with hay or straw or whatever, will reduce yields. So that is a good thing to avoid, not hilling. Also, excessive heat can reduce yield. In very hot summers, potatoes will tend to yield less than in mild summers or when the soil is mulched with lightly colored carbonaceous materials. A lack of fertility as well, both at planting. Remember, I like to add compost with Jadon microorganism solution right over top of the seed potatoes. I've talked about that a few times. So a lack of fertility at the time of planting, but also a lack of fertility at the time where the plant is putting the bulk of its energy into tuber production when they are tall and start to lose their gloss. This is called like the tuber bulking stage, which happens roughly 6 weeks after emergence and lasts for like, I don't know, a handful of weeks, several weeks. This is when plants are taking in large amounts of potassium and nitrogen. It is not a bad idea to apply some foliar or even some fertigation at this point. And obligatory note here, for organic certification, you do have to justify every spray or amendment you used. So you have to consult a soil test of some kind that proves I needed this amendment that I sprayed. In fact, I generally recommend that over a SAP analysis, not because the soil analysis from, say, earlier in the season will be equally accurate. It won't be, but because the cost of a SAP analysis for a small amount of potatoes it's pretty hard to justify financially. Alternatively, a nice compost tea or extract would at very least be helpful at this stage. Also, make sure to be on the lookout for pests and diseases. They can sneak up on a potato crop, and what may look like senescence may actually be a blight, which is not great. So just something to think about there. Anyway, maybe there was an aha moment in there for you. I don't know. It can be a number of factors that reduce yield. It's not always just one. But if you are only pulling up small potatoes and they look decent after the plant is senesced, I'm going to guess either disease or poor drainage or just a lack of fertility, which can all, in fact, happen at the same time. As always, I don't always remember or think of everything that could be helpful, so listeners, feel free to chime in and put any details or ideas or potential causes in the comments section. We'll revisit this on Friday. Otherwise, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, managing the hot house when it's hot outside. Be right back.
Hey, fellow nerds. Farmer Nick here at Riggin Farm in North Georgia, Zone 7B. Here's our cucumber and green bean trellis. The high tunnel tomatoes took a pretty big hit when it got 95 degrees outside last week. Our okra bed is really taking off. The Salanova's not too happy in the heat right now, but the shade cloth is definitely helping some.
Farmer Claire Coleman here from the Winter Growers Podcast. Did you know that I also founded Real Farmer Care, a nonprofit that supports farmer well-being? From my own experiences farming, I knew firsthand that this type of support was missing from ag, so I decided to do something about it. As of today, there are over 500 farmer recipients of a $100 self-care award, with more applying daily. If you'd like to help, each $100 donated supports one new farmer. Visit realfarmercare.com to donate and learn more. Again, that's realfarmercare.com.
All right, so I'm going to take another Patreon question today because this one, especially given the current heat wave that we're in here, is poignant because we're all trying to grow fall crops, even though the summer just, it ain't quitting. Anyway, this question comes to us from new Patreon member, John Heineke. Thanks for joining, John, who writes, quote, "Hi, Jesse and other Patreon members. I'm a new supporter and very excited to be able to join this conversation and grow my knowledge and skills through this awesome network of growers." Hi, John. Thanks. Like many of us are, I am currently starting seeds for the fall season. For transplants, my current method is to seed the trays and let them begin germinating indoors where it is cool. As I see the first seeds pop up, I take the trays out to the greenhouse so they can get the benefit of diffused sunlight to help them get a strong, not leggy start. However, it is hotter than Hades outside, 90s and above, northern Mississippi, and the greenhouse at best is a few degrees warmer than the ambient outdoor temperature. I am using 30% shade cloth, 50% proven to be strong to provide ample light, multiple fans, and watering as needed. I am curious what your strategy is for utilizing your greenhouse for this type of summer germination of seedlings, and is there a better way to manage the seedlings and help protect them from the heat? How hot is your greenhouse? Thank you for everything you do, end quote. All right, great question here, John, and definitely poignant. So we are going through a pretty big heat wave, like I mentioned, and it's frankly a lot to deal with for us, for the plants, for everything. I wish the temps would just chill a bit, but my requests seem to not get a lot of attention, which is fine. It's fine. Not bitter. So anyway, our greenhouse is roughly the same temperature as it is outside, or a little bit cooler. But one thing to note about our greenhouse is that in the summer, it is almost entirely open. We pull both the end walls off, keep a small box fan running above the plants, and water frequently in there. We don't use shade cloth over top, like just draped over top of the greenhouse, but only because it's busy in the field at this time of year. The shade cloth is. I have thrown row cover over top just to reduce that light transmission a bit, which is fine. Plus the airflow is enough in there to keep it cool. I should probably also open the sides just to ensure the airflow comes in from all sides, because it is just a little bit warmer in there. The goal though is to basically to create a shade house of some kind that protects not just from sunlight, but also from sudden rainfall, which I know both of us are susceptible to here in our regions in the summer, but also keeps the plants cool. So this can involve literal shade or can just be a wide open plastic cover area. There are also shade paints you can buy and that I've seen European growers using, where you basically paint the inside of the greenhouse with a white, typically clay-based paint-like substance that reduces light transmission and can be easily washed off later. At least with some of them, you basically dilute it to the desired levels that you want based on your goals, and then you just paint the inside of the greenhouse. I've never personally used this stuff, but they are sold at like greenhouse supplies companies. You can find them there. And if you are certified organic, it wouldn't probably be the worst idea to just check with the certifier and make sure that it's okay to use them. Anyway, it comes down to some shade, a large amount of ventilation, potentially some fans, and watering a lot. This is a tough situation too, because you don't want so much shade that the plants end up leggy before they go into the field, while at the same time you don't want so much heat that they die. So it's an interesting balance you have to strike. Yeah, and for me, kind of like I said, I prefer having a solid sheet of something over the plant so I'm not running out there in the middle of the night in a heavy thunderstorm to move them under cover like I've had to do in the past when they were under a shade house. Trays of seedlings can't really just sit there and get hammered by heavy rain. So that little bit of cover does provide some protection in that way. Also, kind of like you're saying, I don't germinate in much, if anything, in the greenhouse this time of year. I germinate almost everything in the shade of a shed and then move it to the greenhouse because it is just too hot in the sun, even sometimes with that 30% shade. So I will germinate stuff in the shade of my shed, and then as soon as I see germs, move them to the tunnel. For things like lettuce, though, and spinach, I talked about this recently, but I will add another tray over top of them until they are fully germinated, just for extra shade. For brassicas, it's not quite as necessary. Like, I'll just move the brassicas into the tunnel and just keep them watered. Anyway, I hope there was something of use in there. Otherwise, I think we're done here Monday. Don't forget, No-Till Growers is now officially a nonprofit 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. You can learn more about how to do that in the show notes. Please make sure to like and subscribe and/or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That's an easy way to help us out. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor the show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at no-tillgrowers.com. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music and Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Pick up a hat or a copy of the Living Soil Handbook at no-tillgrowers.com to support our work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/no-tillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of August. Yeah, we're still in August. You get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs today to David Crowder and Sarah and Evelyn. All right, so in this week's story, there is a young couple in, let's say, I don't know, southern Indiana. Kentucky kind of have a rivalry thing, but I like southern Indiana. Anyway, who one day receive a letter from a lawyer of a person they'd never heard of that says that our couple here, inherited a new piece of property and that they could have it for free. And all the taxes would be paid forever, indefinitely, by the estate on one condition. The condition was that this young couple had to farm it for at least 10 years. This land, said the letter, was about 10 acres with what was described as a modern, sustainable living quarters. Now, this couple, to be clear, actually liked to garden and had joked about one day owning a farm, but the idea of starting a farm on a property, that was just given to them by a mysterious estate of a person they had no relation to and had never heard of. Well, what the heck were they going to do here? The land was relatively close by, and when they spoke with the lawyers, because obviously you got to make sure this stuff is legit, the lawyers gave them a date to go see the farm. So the young couple decided to at least, why not? Let's go check it out, before making any decisions. Why not, right? And that is for tomorrow on Why Not, Right? Farm. I don't know if that one works. Why not, right? Farm? I'll have to workshop in that one. All right. Thanks for watching and/or listening. We'll see you then. Bye.
When one walks back home, honey, only one knows it all. Well, she walked up the hillside.